That sounded bad out of context, so don't clip that portion there.
Don't even worry about it. We're just going to talk real estate.
That's another area where you can save $1,500, $2,000.
Welcome back, everybody, to the InvestThis Podcast. You know who I am. I'm your host, Scott Bauer. Today, I'm really excited to have Dave Biederbeck with me. Those of you that don't know, Dave Biederbeck is with Spencer's TV and Appliance. He's who I personally have used for a long time to get my appliances for all the flips and rental properties that we have. That's just a sliver of what he is. But he's not only that provider for me, but he's also an investor himself. He's a flipper. He's got rental properties. He has a family that he cares about, and we're going to dive into all that today. Dave, thanks for being here, man.
Thanks for having me.
I'm excited. We were kind of talking about before the show, like how this is going to run. And I said, don't even worry about it. We're just going to talk real estate for a little bit.
Probably the least qualified individual for talking real estate on your podcast, but we'll see how it goes.
You know, let's get started with how did you even get to where you're at now? I mean, break down kind of where'd you get started? How'd you even get into know what real estate was? How'd you get to where you are now?
How far back do you want me to go?
Well, I don't know.
Like
when did
4
it
years
start?
old?
Is that when you
Monopoly? Monopoly, favorite game in the household.
Okay. I actually still love that game.
So do I.
That's an awesome one.
Beat my kids.
Yeah.
That sounded bad out of context, so don't clip that portion there. Beat my kids at Monopoly. No, I actually, strangely enough, a lot of people don't know this about me, but went to school for ministry, of all things, and actually worked at a church for 4 years. Actually, 2 churches. And I did student ministry, and then got into more of like the creative side, marketing portion of it. But just personally, I consider myself a believer, but it's difficult to work at the same place where you're trying to go for spiritual reasons. All
Sure.
the stuff that's going on interrelationally with people that you're trying to go to. So just my wife and I decided that we can be involved in other ways without having to commit to, full time. At the same time, that's kind of formidable years when you start having kids and you realize, man, these salary positions lock you in at a rate, and then life just keeps getting more and more and more expensive. So found myself taking those skills that I learned, and I got hired at an agency in Tempe, and fell into a role that more and more I ended up just selling their services, which I lost touch with the creative, but again, I was actually on a salary role. There was no incentive for me to sell more, even though I was bringing in business and it was creating more work for our employees. I wasn't seeing the direct benefits. So long and the short of it is, way back when, my grandfather started an independent retail company for appliances, and my father had grown that business quite a bit, actually tremendously. Went from 1 store in downtown Mesa to now we have 12 and have purchased land for our 13th eventually. And went from doing, I want to say before we took over, 22 million was their biggest year. And this last year we did 350 million. In that transference, and part of the success was that he had turned it into an employee-owned company, which is crazy because when everyone has a part ownership, no matter how great or how small, varying degrees, that's when we went from 170 million to 350 million in just 6 years. So,
dude, I think that's actually a really important point to even just stop and talk about, right? Because it's very common. I feel like all of the employees that work there now, they have a stake in the company and how this company operates, right? They almost take it as if it's their own property. It's like whether you rent a property or you own it, you take care of them differently, typically, right?
Well, I mean, I heard one of my colleagues yell at another colleague who threw away a stapler. And he's like, no, the thing's jammed, it's not working. He's like, I had planned on fixing that before I left. That's a waste of money. You don't get conversations like that when you don't feel like you have some part of ownership in it, right?
So that's called an ESOP, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess, so when did Spencer start, or when did your grandfather start it?
77.
Okay, so.
And that's a cool story too. actually. Well, unless you had a place you wanted to go with.
Well, I just was going to say, like, so for you, so 77, there's this ESOP company. It's employee owned. It's it's an employee owned company built in the 70s, originally built in the 70s. Now you're in a generational ownership type of a role because you're part of the immediate family that owns this thing, even though everybody owns it. Like you're in the...
Yeah, so it actually didn't become an ESOP until after my dad had taken over. So
Okay.
he sold it back to the employees. At the time, like I said, was in ministry. I schlepping appliances, although it's really in my skill set now, it just didn't seem like something I was interested in. So that transition came later.
Okay.
I came on board after that transition had happened.
Okay.
But where I was going with it was that first part, since you're talking about InvestThis, like one of the reasons my grandpa chose Arizona, because they were in Minnesota. He managed a Sears appliance, I don't know what you call it, section
Sure. Yeah.
for like 8 years, and then was annoyed that he was getting 20% of the profits on every individual sale. And I think that's what kind of that harbored annoyment. How do you say that? Annoyance was something that I think was part and critical of transferring it over as an ESOP, because individuals, when they get better at what they do, you've probably had this yourself, when they see that they want to branch out, if they don't have any ownership, it's hard to keep employees when any silver thing distracts them and they decide they want to go that direction. But what I was talking about with the 1977 thing is he had $5,000 to his name from a vehicle that they sold, and then they went down to one vehicle, went all the way across the U.S., and he came to Arizona specifically because of the tax benefits versus in Minnesota was a big portion of it. A growing city, he saw the writing on the wall that people were moving this direction.
Tired of shoveling snow, man. I'm telling you.
Yeah, it's huge. And I mean, that's important to think about where you want to plant your roots, and that's
For sure.
some great foresight. So he took $5,000 and he bought the original store, the downtown Mesa store, was Spencer's Appliance Repair. Okay, he took the $5,000, bought a Spencer's Appliance Repair for $30,000, which they were struggling, but he got the store and he got whatever they had there, and then grew it to what it is today, which is just, I think, pretty awesome, incredible story. So they didn't have the money to change it to TV and appliance, so they just knocked the appliance repair off, left the Spencers, and even though my last name's Biederbeck, so was his, it never was going to be Biederbeck's appliance. It didn't.
So who's Spencer? Is there any
previous owner of the appliance repair?
In a way that's probably good though, because like nobody knows that it's the Biederbecks that actually owns it, right? It's Spencer's. So.
Yeah, and but the guy's family is still around. They are in, I think, in Pine Top, and they still say that my grandfather started Spencer's. It's a different one.
That's funny. I actually, before I knew any different, I have a good friend of mine, another serial entrepreneur that's here in town that you might do business with, but his name is Spencer, and I wondered if it was actually, yeah, I actually thought it was. I wondered if it was his company to begin with. This is years ago, but
no, but he's a good guy.
He's a great guy, definitely a great guy.
I know a lot of the investors just because everyone needs appliances in that world. So fast forwarding to where I got on board with that, it was just kind of the realization that you can work as hard as you want and grow your business and then see the direct results over just having salary job, and that's kind of the allure of that.
Well, so and I kind of was thinking about it. So now, okay, you're technically an employee for Spencer's, yet at the same time, as I mentioned at the beginning of the call, you're also an entrepreneur. You're also an investor yourself, right? And so you take your W-2 salary job and you're able to allocate those funds towards other things, right? Which I think is a really good takeaway for those that are out there that are maybe working a W-2 job and want to branch away from, if you feel like you're stuck and you're only in a W-2 job and you feel like you can't get out of it, you can allocate your funds into going a different direction like you have.
Yeah.
Right?
So no offense to you or anyone watching in the investor world, I think the king priority is to get out get out from that, right? It's like looked down upon. But I look at it opposite, and it's maybe different because it's sales. Like
Yeah.
I can drive the needle with sales. The difference between the lowest selling salesperson and the highest selling salesperson is greater than 10x at our company.
Absolutely.
So W-2, yes, but it's 100% commission. And so I think that's kind of a differentiator. The W-2 doesn't, the number at the end of the week isn't the same for every person. That's something that is a culture of ours. We know there's no ambiguity about what people make. In fact, every week on Wednesday, right around noon, what you're going to get paid on Friday is made public to everyone in the company.
But that's great because that makes it a competition, right?
Right.
And that's ultimately in a sales role what you have to have.
Right.
100%.
So if you're caught complaining about the economy is not good to me and your check is 1/10 of the other guy, then what is he living in a different economy? No.
Which is actually great because that puts people in check, right? I mean, that's a great culture to have, 100%. Right. But where I was going with that is like, okay, so you were, at what point did you decide, well, I guess with being in the sales role, all sales are going to be like that, where like you're 95% of the sales go to the top 20% of the people.
Same in real estate agents. It's the same with doctors' offices or dentists, whatever.
I mean, across the board. And those that outwork and those that put in the time and the effort and and the ones that are there and committed to it are the ones that seem to always find the success, right? They seem to be the lucky ones out there. But the reality is it's not about luck. It's about actually putting, not using excuses like the economy or not using things that, outside excuses in order to justify why you can't perform.
Right.
Right. If you're a winner, if you're a performer, then you're going to be a performer. You're going to figure it out no matter what. I feel like I've been able to.
And the flip side happens. I mean, I've heard more people complain about the interest rate in the last, how long has it been? 2.5 years?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And just sat there and said, oh, well, the interest is high. It's like, okay.
I mean, let's be honest here. What they're not realizing is that the second that interest rate goes down, that value of that property is going to go up. It's going to
and the demand for and the competition that they're going to have to run into. Right. So you gotta. I mean, I'm not big into the woo-woo power of positivity, but it's something that my wife and I talk with our kids about. You go into your day the way that the day's probably going to turn out.
Yeah.
So like you need to have the right frame of mind. You need to think positively because you can find a problem with every deal, with every sale, with every potential opportunity. And at the end of the day, you need to make the right choice with the knowledge that at that point in time.
Dude, I was just reading an excerpt this morning about the fact that like you have to have confidence going in, right? Like you have to start your day with confidence, whether you have it or not. Like starting off on the positive note and having faith that you're going to succeed. If you start your day off thinking that you're going to fail, you're going to fail. Right? That's just, but if you start off the day like, hey, I'm going to succeed no matter what adversity comes in front of me, whatever challenges I'm going to come up against, I'm going to find a way and I'm going to figure it out. Like your opportunity to succeed in that day is 100x greater, whatever it is.
Well, I found a thing that piggybacks exactly off of that. There was a study that was done with wrestlers, and they're like elite wrestlers, and then so they'd take people that had tied, they had even records, even tied against each other. They measured testosterone after that one had lost and it had been reduced, and in the one that had won, it had been it had elevated, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like a circular thing. Like the more energy and focus you have in getting whatever deal, it raises, because as you walk into those wrestlers, when they walked into it, if one had lowered testosterone and higher, the one was more probable to win was the one that had higher. So now that the one's lowered, he's going to have a harder time with the next one. The guy was already elevated is now more elevated in his next match. It's that much more opportunity for him to have success.
I mean, here we can talk about, testosterone, which, I think there's a correlation between testosterone and confidence in this context, right? Because whether if you walk into an event or you walk into a situation with a higher confidence level than if you, like I'm saying, if you go into something and you're confident about it, your chances of winning are much, much higher than if you go in there already assuming you're going to lose, right? We're going a lot of different directions in this, but I think that
all over.
it's good shit to talk about. What point did you decide that you're like, okay, I want to diversify my income and I want to start getting into the space that I'm, I want to get into flipping, or I want to get into the investment space?
I'll just explain. I mean, people, to get a context of what I do and how I can help. People think of like selling appliances as grandma walking into the store. She's going to buy her microwave or toaster, which we don't sell toasters, but that idea. But I mean, when you look at the valley and you look at all the homes, every home's got a washer, dryer, fridge, microwave, dishwasher, stove, and after they see me, probably a water softener and a whole house filtration system. Those are and a TV.
Yes.
So, how many, you probably know better than I do, how many homes are in the valley?
I don't know, a shit ton.
So, I mean, I work with investors. I work with developers. I work with condo association, property management companies, individuals such as yourself, fix and flippers, even just people who own 6 or 7 rentals that every now and again their dishwasher breaks. I'm always there for people, and I think that's something I take pride in, that as I've gotten to know more and more investors, I've been able to take care of them. But that's kind of where the interest really started to begin on what you were asking about, which is the real estate side.
I kind of thought that would be the segue for you, right? You start working in the appliance section that's serving the people that that are needing those appliances or needing that product. Then you watch how the people, you probably see how somebody says, "Oh, I'm doing this fix and flip," and maybe a little bit more about it. Maybe they call you for the appliances, but then maybe you dive in and you say, "Oh, they bought it for this and they've had it for 90 days and now they're selling it for this, and why can't I do that?" Right? Is that kind of how that works?
That's part of it, absolutely. So, you kind of notice that the repeat buyers, when you begin to develop a network, are repeat buyers for a reason. They're doing deals.
Yeah.
If they need a 3-piece package for another fix and flip, and it's the 4th time you've heard from them, and you're like, "Well, you spent, $1,600 with me 4 times. It was obviously worth it to you to put the new package in whatever you're selling. So I can only assume that you're gonna, be doing better than what you spent on the appliances, right?" So you kind of see that. But investing for me, it's not just, I have a network, so I think of myself as a very small fish. I mean, you and I have mutual friends that done 130 flips in 1 year, so I don't think of myself as like some big investor. I do consider myself a connector, and that's and through my connections have been able to kind of parlay what I'm bringing home to my family into long-term, hopefully generational wealth for them.
So, which is absolutely true. Of course you're a connector. Of course you're somebody that's connected to the space. And there's levels, right? It's so interesting how I look at, like, there's so many different levels. The second that you think you're at the top, there's somebody that's doing more. There's somebody that's doing different, right? There's another level that you need to get to. That person who actually, I think I know who you're talking about, that does that many flips in a year, and actually physical flips, like all the way from beginning to end flips. That person, there's another level above him, right? Mm-hmm. There's always another level. And so,
well, that's the other thing that interested me, because when I started getting into real estate, I started also like getting slightly into politics. Okay. And so I look at places like, I don't know if you're familiar with Vanguard or BlackRock.
Of course.
And to your point, they're at the exponential nth level, right? They're at that top echelon that you're referring to, that looks at 130 flips and scoffs or turns their nose, even though it's made a significant impact on his family and will forever. But if they're doing something
different game,
if they're buying up all the, a large percentage of the houses in Arizona, wouldn't you want just a sliver of that pie for your own life?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe that'd be a good idea.
I think it is, because why do you say maybe? What would be the downfall?
Well, because with that comes there's other things, like if you're wanting a sliver of BlackRock's pie, right, then you're going to have the infrastructure to manage that, right? And so then I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but what if that's not what you want? right?
I just mean in your own sphere.
Oh,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
like
yeah.
securing real estate for, well, like that's another reason is I want to establish roots in Arizona for my family. It's something unique about my family is that all of us live in Arizona. My brother lives right up the street, and I think that's really cool. If I contrast that with a lot of people's families, they spread out all over, and it's not necessarily a negative. Maybe the job was out there, whatever. But I think it's really cool to be able to establish roots. And that was why I bought the first house that I ever bought, was to have a place close to home for my kids if they ever needed a place to stay.
Sure.
I'm not going to give it to them for free. They got to, but at least if grandkids are in the equation or whatever, there's always a place that's close by.
You'll have options for them,
mm-hmm.
which is great. Actually, I'm trying to get slowly but surely getting my family to move here. I'm the first person in my family to move out west, so to speak. I have no family.
Where are you
family. From Iowa.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm from the Midwest. Moved out here 2011, so it's been 13 years. It'll be 13 years in January. So since I've been out here.
What brought you out here?
Well, have you ever been to Iowa before?
No.
Okay, well, you should go there and you'll know why. No, it was just my whole family is from the Midwest, come from a farming background, and there wasn't the opportunities that I wanted there, and I had an opportunity to come out here. It was something totally different. It was a way to get away from the sphere, to get away from my family, to get away from my friends. I'm not saying that in a bad way, but it just was something that was really, really challenging, that was really tough, and I knew that was going to help me grow in tremendous ways, which it did.
That's awesome.
But since then, now I moved out here. My mom now lives out here, and she lives 1.5 miles from us. I have a daughter, and we have another baby on the way. My wife is pregnant. Thank you. So the roots are definitely being set here, and they're going to continue to be that way. So and I think this is a great place to do it, right? I mean, there's so much opportunity here, and I'm building that. For my family, so that I can be the leader within my family to be able to, show them the way, so to speak. So I'm excited about that. But It's interesting that you say that you bring that up, to have all your family here.
Yeah.
So, I guess it's a good transition into your kids. I mean, how do you teach or try to instill your kids with what you've learned in the investment space, or how do you instill in them, like, what are you trying to teach them right now? How old are they?
13, 12, and 11.
Oh yeah, they're ripe. They're ripe.
Back to back. All of them attempted prevention. Didn't work.
That's great.
We talk a lot about how, I'm going to sound like Kamala here, how time moves fast and it moves slow. Like you think right now, like on a week to week basis, it's going slow. Christmas is so far away. But like time speeds up as you get older, and
dude, doesn't it though, man?
Yeah, when you're talking to me as an 18-year-old about where you want to be in 20 years, you think, oh, it is a lifetime, more than your lifetime at that point in time. But 20 years moves really fast, and I find myself approaching 40, and realizing, man, compound interest. That's one thing that needs to be instilled, because compound interest is amazing, but all it takes is just time, right?
Yeah.
We talk about deflation.
That's a pretty high level concept to give to a 13, 12, and 11-year-old.
Talk about it all the time. What sort of asset is that? What sort of asset is that? Appreciating, depreciating. I mean,
the fact that they even know the difference between an asset and a liability, I'm assuming that you've explained that to them, but that's huge.
Yeah.
That's massive.
But when I talk about depreciation, did you know that Louisiana was purchased for 3 cents an acre as a whole?
I want to say I did actually know that at some time.
So as you print, we talk about this all the time. I mean, money sitting is doing absolutely nothing. In fact, it's not just doing nothing.
It's losing.
It's losing.
At the
last
level.
5 years, it's losing very quickly.
Yeah.
So, and the flip side of it is if you're, going to have it parked anywhere, then it should be in something that's not only making something, but also getting raised in value. And that happens naturally when money gets printed. It can be a $30,000 house one place, it can be a $3 million place another, but the percentages might change based upon what's happening in that local market. But as a general rule of thumb, as things get printed, the money becomes worthless. So one of the ways we easily illustrate that is I don't get to play very often anymore, but I was a really big poker player. Actually helped me buy my first personal home while I was in college. That's
pretty cool.
And so
you're a gambler. Nice.
I call it investor. Series of short-term investments.
That's true.
Every hand.
Yeah.
And you can only make decisions, based upon the knowledge you have through the hand up until the point that you raise, call, or fold. It's the simplest game of economics, right? And so the way that we do that with the kids is play poker. They all know how to play poker, but we add money to the pot, and then all of a sudden, not to the pot that we're playing with, but like if I let someone rebuy in, now there's more chips in the middle, right? So if I only have 10 chips left and everyone else is given, more is brought into the game, my 10 chips mean less now, right?
Less, right.
So it's a simple, just using that in every day-to-day life, whether it's with games or otherwise.
That's actually a good analogy, but I mean, you could really do that with anything, right? If you only have 10 of something, right, each one of those 10 is worth 10 cents, or if it's to equal 100, right? But if you then take 1,000 of them, now you just have more to deal with. Each one of those is worth a lot less.
Yeah.
If your total is 100, right? Mm-hmm. So that's a really good analogy to look at it that way. So you kind of teach them about what an asset does, right? Because if you own an asset like real estate, right, the dollars that are attached to it is the currency that we attach to it. But the value of that really, like, how do I explain this in a better way?
If a Happy Meal now costs $20 and you saved the $4 it used to cost, your $4 isn't worth very much any longer, right?
Right.
You might be able to buy the drink.
Right. What I was thinking though, like so if today you buy a house for $150,000, and because of inflation or because of the printing of more money, and you wait 5 years, now all of a sudden it's worth $550,000, right? Your dollar, like, you still have the same house. It's still a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, so to speak, right? But now the value that somebody's willing to give you is 4x or 5x what you originally paid for it. Now, why should that make any sense at all, right? Because if you go sell that asset and you get that $550,000, in my example I just said, that $550 is going to go a lot less than the original $150 you paid for it, right?
Possibly, yeah.
So I don't know. That's probably not the best way to explain it. I don't know, but have you a different spin on it? Do you think money buys happiness? Have you explained that to your kids?
No, actually, I learned this really well. So, I mean, I worked at the Four Seasons when I was in college.
Very low-end hotel, yes.
Yes. In Chicago. And you saw within weeks of working there, money does not buy happiness.
Right.
Not at all. There's some miserable people, and I could probably name a few names, but I don't want Four Seasons coming after me. So.
I don't think Four Seasons is going to be watching this, although I have stayed there a lot, and they probably follow me on, whatever. I actually love Four Seasons. It's a great place to go. But it's interesting how that is, right? Mm-hmm. Because I feel like our culture, and it does, social media, it tries to instill in you that money buys happiness because it buys you the nice car, because it takes you on the vacations, because it will buy you the jet ski or will buy you the boat or whatever. But then you realize that that's just stuff. Doesn't matter. Like, once you start earning money and you get to a certain level, you realize that if I make more money, like, there's not a big difference in my enjoyment, my happiness level, because once you can buy all the shit, then it's like.
So, and then, but I've also had the opposite perspective, right?
Right.
So, I mean, working in a church, being in ministry, there's kind of a piracy that can be put into practice where it's like, we don't need money and stuff. But at the same time, like, my root priorities is God, family, and then work, right? In that order. But the flip side of it is like, if I can't serve my family well with the bottom portion of that equation by working hard and being smart, then I can't focus on what I also want them to look up towards, which is God, and having a comfortable space where we can have those conversations, where we're not stressed out, we're not operating in a fight or flight mentality. So yeah, it's got to be a pole of two tensions. It's not going to bring happiness, but it also can be a distractor from having what I would consider joy by not having enough of it, where you're stretched thin.
I mean, yeah, like there's the abundance mentality versus like if you can't put food on the table, if you can't pay your rent, if you can't pay your payments, like that's a stress level that is so uncomfortable, right?
And you make poor decisions.
And you make terrible decisions, right? Because you're in this fight or flight mode. You're in this mode where it's like you're so stressed out about everything, and it's like you're not able to make accurate decisions. And so that's interesting.
Well, what age is your son or daughter?
Daughter. She's 11.
Yeah. So what conversations are you trying to? I mean, you said that those were, I guess 11 is on the early side. So my son gets to hear. That's one of the niceties about having different ages, is he kind of gets pulled into conversations that I now realize I could have already been having with my 13-year-old.
Yep.
And he's totally comprehending them. So I would say it's never too early to start having conversations that are deeper than maybe we give them credit for.
Well, what I've realized is, definitely her name's Nayeli, and she is a sponge. She hears everything that I say. Everything.
Good or bad.
Everything. Doesn't matter what it is. She hears all of it, and she actually comprehends a lot more of it than what I probably give her credit for. And so, and that's really just ignorance on my side, right? I think that she's not going to comprehend because she's only 11, but yet she has a way of comprehending it in a way for herself that is maybe different than I might comprehend it, but it's relevant to her life, right? And so you're right. I think it's kind of difficult to, like, I want to find ways to try to explain to her about how money works and we are actively doing that, but it's like, it's something that takes work on my part. I need to really figure out how I can do this in a way, that makes it make sense, right? Because the way that she sees it, like, she loves Starbucks, for an example. She loves Starbucks. Well, it's $6-7 for one of these drinks, right? And when you realize that, like, that's
the portion of her net wealth, that's a very large percentage.
Right. And she doesn't understand how money works. Of course, I'm very blessed to have the life that I've been able to live and to provide for her, the only life that she knows of. But she doesn't understand what it took for me to get there yet, right? Mm-hmm. I haven't been able to explain to her that, like, listen, I was broke at one point when I started. Broke is an understatement of how broke I was, but because I had to be smart and learn to create value and to be a value in the marketplace and to be, to be able to create an opportunity that would allow me to get out of being broke, mm-hmm. right? And that took a lot of mental energy, that took a lot of time, that took a lot of, like, serious, devotion to doing this. She doesn't understand that at this point, right? And I don't know, like.
So we don't have any. So no money in our house gets spent unless it was earned. Mm-hmm. So and that's included for camps. That's included for just about everything but baseball, because I don't think he could earn enough for the cost of club baseball. But so we call it commissions.
Okay.
There's no such thing as chores. There's commission opportunities.
That's actually a great. I like that thought of, like, no money's spent unless it's earned.
And no money's earned unless you did the job to get it. So, like, we don't have chores. There's opportunities for commissions. And so one kid will in years you'll have the one, but what it allows for is my one daughter will go, she'll get the chicken eggs, she'll wash the windows, she'll wipe the walls, she'll scrap up all those opportunities. And it's kind of like what we were talking about at work. It's like, now this thing comes up and she's able to go and the other girl isn't. Well,
now there's competition there.
The opportunity was there. Where were you, right?
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that, and I didn't even implement that. My wife, I don't know where she got that, but that's totally I'm not going to take credit for that one at all. I just think it's brilliant. It's like, here's the opportunities for commissions. When they're all out, that's been paid, give them back to me and you'll get paid out accordingly.
I think that's really a great way to go. Matter of fact, last night specifically, my wife went out. She has a couple, like, girlfriends that she likes to go to dinner with every, like, once a quarter or whatever. And that was last night what she went and did. So I had daddy-daughter night last night.
That's
and
awesome.
we just went to dinner. And she was like, she loves like nails. She's at the age where she like putting on fake nails and like making them. She loves to like paint them, and she'll whatever, right?
Too.
Just ridiculous what she does with nails, but that's what she loves to do. And
Yeah.
so she's like, hey, I really want to get these like these. They're
I thought you were going to tell me I really want to put nails on you, Dad.
Oh, she does. She would love to. She's already tried that. I haven't let her do that yet. She wants. I'll get to what she said for her payment solution in a second, but it's $6.99, right, for like a whole thing of these blank. They're just plastic.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Oh, they're all over my house.
Yeah.
I'm very well aware.
Yeah. So, anyways, but I'm like, do you have $6.99 to pay for them? She says no. I said, well, that seems like a problem, doesn't it? I was like, so what are we gonna do in order to earn this if you want me to buy them?
Yeah.
And so we have a dog, and for like in a previous time when she had this, we had her clean up the dog poo, and she absolutely hated it. It was like the worst thing. She's like, I'm not cleaning up dog poo, I'm not doing your laundry, and I'm not doing dishes. And I said, well, the interesting thing about that is that work is hard, and sometimes you got to do things you don't want to do at work. So that doesn't seem like this is part of the deal, right?
Yeah.
Long story short, we ended up coming up with an agreement where she's going to clean up the next 3 dinners that we have at home next week, and that's going to be the payment. But it's like, you know, I'm trying to find ways where she can earn it. So I love that idea that you have where, hey, there's commission opportunities. If you want to go and clean the windows, there's $1. If you want to clean this up, or you want to do, it's not chores, these are commission opportunities.
Yeah.
And that's a great way for her to, or any kids out there, to be able to, you know, learn how the work process is. It's not chores. Chores aren't free. I mean, or chores maybe don't do it. This in real life, it would be a commission opportunity, an opportunity to make money.
Yeah. So and the other thing, since you have an 11-year-old daughter, one of the things that my daughter asked me, she said, Dad, I think I need to have. So this is right about the time that we changed it to commissions. That's why I think of this. I think you need to raise my allowance. And I was like, okay, why is that? And she said, well, Grayson's dad said just about the cheapest reliable car anymore is around $12,000. And I'm going to turn 16 in 5 years. And I said, so I asked her, I said, so are you saying you want me to buy you a car? And she said, no, I'm asking if you can raise my commissions. I mean, raise my, at the time, allowance. I said, yeah, but who pays your allowance? Well, you and Mom. Okay, so if we raise it, then we're effectively entrusting you with money that we hope you don't spend along the way, and hoping that you save enough of it to buy a car, and vicariously, therefore, we're buying your car, right? So we worked it backwards and figured out how much money she would need to save on each year and then each month if she was going to be able to save up for that amount. And so this is about 2 years ago. At the time, I think it was around January, our fruit trees started ripening up. So for 6 or 7 weeks, her and my daughter put together a lemonade stand, it was a lemonade with real lemons, and then they also squeezed nectarines, tangerines, and they'd made a mix with grapefruit as well.
Sounds delicious.
They stood on mesquite, and they'd go like 3 or 4 times a week. They knew because we're homeschooled, but they knew when the school got out. So moms were parked in line, and they'd have to slow drive past them and either not make eye contact with them, or maybe sometimes they'd give them money. So in a 6 or 7 week portion, they split it, but that lemonade stand, and we made them account for costs. So when they wanted to buy plastic cups, they wasn't going to come out of the pantry again like it did last time. And maybe you could get 50 cents more if we get you one with a top and a straw, so they don't have to worry about it rattling in the car, right? So that comes out of the costs. And by the end of it, also until the fruit was no longer ripe, it made $760.
Wow.
So the Roop overripens like probably mid-March. So yeah, from that conversation early January, she was able to identify, oh, okay, stuff is expensive and Dad's not going to give it to me. And they came up with a creative solution and did a great job.
Dude, I think that that's a really good way for to instill in your kids how not only business works or how to earn money, but also entrepreneurship, right? I mean, you start teaching them what a P&L looks like, right? This is profit and loss. These are input costs. This is your profit.
Well, and they got an interest-free loan, but they learned what a loan works like. Yeah, yeah, we bought the first cups, and yeah, we bought the cardboard signs and the markers that you used, and we had a little table set up, but that was an interest-free loan.
Yeah.
You got to pay that back, and in the future, you'll have to pay this much more. So kind of just walking through those step by step, but getting practical real day value to it.
Dude, that's awesome. I think that's really good for all the parents that are out there. I'd love to hear what you're doing. If you can comment and like tell me what you do to help instill in your kids either business or money or how the whole process works. I think this is a very like intriguing and interesting topic because like I'm struggling with it right now. You know, I want to learn like what are strategies you can use in order to help teach your kids how to do it, right? It's a big thing.
Well, and we can get off the kids after this, but my last comment was I've always said because my wife was guilty of this, like they'd say something cute, like, and she'd say it back to them, even though it was the incorrect way to say it because they're little, toddlers or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, don't reinforce their. She's like, no, it's cute to call the curb a hobby dobby. That was one of them. I'm like, but it means nothing to no one else. So like, let's talk to them like an adult from the time that they're born. And I think a lot of parents miss out on some great conversations, and instead, pass them a phone and because someone's educating your child.
Yeah.
It's either their favorite influencer on YouTube or, it's direct communication with them yourself.
Dude, I think we could probably go on with the kids thing for a long time because there's a whole nother separate conversation about how social media and how YouTube and how the internet in general are influencing our kids and how they're going to continue. But we got to get off the kid thing.
Yeah, you got it.
So let's change it up. So prior to you getting into where you're at now, was there a lesson that you learned at another job that really directed you in one way? Some big lesson that you learned through another opportunity that you were in before?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head, other than I joke with my friend, my best friend. We've been friends since we were 9 years old. He's an engineer, and he's good for me because I'm about the opposite of.
You're a sales guy, man. That's it. I get it.
And he always says, I could not work at a job where I wouldn't know what I'm going to get paid at the end of the week. And I'm the opposite.
Yeah.
I'm very ambitious. I'm very, hyper focused and want to get things done in a consolidated timeline for each task. And that's because I want to maximize the time, right? Versus when I'm at a job and it's, same thing, it actually deflates my ambition.
Oh yeah, I hate it. It would be terrible. In a way, sometimes I'll kind of get into that even in like there'll be a week or something where things feel very mundane and I got to get out. I got to go do something else. I got to change my focus, right? But that's actually a good way to ask this question then. So how does your personal development and your focus on your health and your other areas of your life help you succeed in your business?
I'm hesitant to say anything because I'm not the strongest guy at the table, but I do work out, believe it or not. No, I'm just kidding. I swam laps this morning.
That's great. That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, low impact on your joints.
Yeah.
Cold water waking you up.
Oh yeah.
Get your heart rate up. And it's funny. I mean, my wife can tell because we go to the gym at different times. My wife can tell within 4 or 5 days if I haven't gone to the gym, even if she wouldn't have known otherwise.
Oh yeah.
Even if I hadn't told her I didn't go to the gym today, she'll just be like, honey, you need to get some energy out. Just to go to the gym.
It's interesting though. I bet it's more than that, right? Because when you go work out and you exercise your muscles and you raise your heart rate up, right? It makes you think differently. It changes your mood, right? Submersion in cold water. I'm a cold plunger every day. I do it every single day, once or twice a day, every day. And
really?
First thing in the morning, right when I wake up.
I've never done it. I hear all this stuff about
dude.
it, but
Game changer, bro. I mean, it is literally a game changer. My favorite thing actually in the world to do it because it's super cold. I have my tank set at 36 degrees and it is cold.
Well, I hate to, I always tell people if you don't know what to do, then look at people who are successful and just model it after them. And every person I know that has told me that their cold plunger has some amount of success I could look up to. So there's got to be something to it that I'm missing out on.
I think that, and this is relevant, it's doing the hard thing, right? It's like getting out of your comfort zone or doing something that you don't want to do. Because to be honest with you, as much as I love it, and I really do deep down, every day I don't want to do it.
Really?
Every day. But the fact that you force yourself to get in there and do that changes your psyche throughout the rest of the day, right? Because then when there's something else that comes up in business or something you don't want to do in business or even in your life or whatever, but you have to do it. Correct. Phone call, meeting, whatever it is, you just go do it. You know how you can embrace that. And that's a muscle that you're able to build strength with.
So what percentage, if you had to gauge it, would be mental effects just simply based on the physical aspect of it, or actual physiological changes that your body has to adapt to when it is getting cold like it is?
That's a really good question. I would almost say like 40% mental, because it's 3 minutes at a time. 3 minutes goes by quickly, right? You can do anything you want for 3 minutes. You could anything for 3 minutes. You're not going to die, right? So the physical aspect, although it is so cold and it's so shocking and whatever, it's 3 minutes. So you can withstand that. But the mental change is really the big game changer, because the second that you get into a cold plunge like that, it's a fight or flight, right? You want to instantly get out. And as you're sitting there, you have to focus on your breathing. So it allows you to focus. It's kind of like a semi-meditation time. And afterwards,
because if you don't focus on your breathing, you start shivering, or
it'll take longer than that for you to start shivering. But your anxiety kind of goes haywire, but you have to focus on the breathing. You want to get out. Like your mind is saying, get out. It's telling your body to get out. That's all you can think about. Oh, it's so cold. Your hands kind of go tingly. Your feet can go tingly, like, especially when you're not used to it. It is so cold. But when you focus on your breathing, now all of a sudden you have to focus on, the breathing in and out, and it allows you to just center your mind and only focus on that, not let any of the outside stuff affect what you're doing. And then after you get out, dude, it's like they talk about, they compare it to like if you do like cocaine rush, like a cocaine drug, but you get like 4 hours of it after you get out. And I'll attest to that. It's an amazing feeling. You just feel really
to the cocaine similarity.
No, to the long afterward effect, right? Yeah. Like you feel so high for a while because you've changed your body. Like you got in really, really cold water, and it just feels great.
Well, I'd be open to trying it, but
it's a lot of fun.
I don't know of an easy access place where you get to without having to commit to doing it at home.
What other personal development stuff do you do? Like, are you a big reader? Do you meditate? Are there things like that you've been able to implement in your life?
Do not meditate. In a modern day sense of what people assume I mean by that, but go through the Bible, Proverbs, meditate on those words, not trying to empty my mind, but instead what I would make as a distinction, instead of trying to empty my mind, fill it with say Proverbs or things like that to set my tempo throughout the day. But I do like to read and or listen to books is really more realistic most of the time. But I think it's important. I think like understanding history is something that I'm interested in knowing about, because as they, you're bound to repeat it if you don't understand it. So
even if you understand it seems like it still repeats itself.
Yeah, I think absolutely.
That's just kind of how like the whole life cycle works, right? Matter of fact, daughter's 11. They had like this is Spirit Week this week, and they had it was called Decades yesterday, and you pick a decade, and that's how you dress, right? A lot of kids wearing baggy jeans again, baggy shirts.
Oh, I know. It looks like the 90s all over again.
That's what it is. It's 90s, and it's just like that's what's happening, especially like in houses too. We see the same thing that happens. It's like right now it's still in the like lights, and it's like the whites and
but a lot of people are doing oak again.
They're coming back, right? Because it's different, right? It's like they get tired of the white and black, and then it'll go back to the oak or go back to the browns, and it just goes in cycles like that.
But to your question, maybe not the direction you thought, but I mean, personal development, one of the newest things that we have tried, and something that I think maybe had sparked this conversation to some extent, was stretching my wife and I's comfort zone in terms of investments. We started that pad split back in February,
Yep.
which is totally different than a single family home.
Very different.
But that's one area that we're still learning. But
Has it worked well? I mean, last time we talked, you said it was, but
yeah. So if anyone were to ask me or were thinking about doing it that hadn't, the first thing I would say is just be willing to fire and have a vacant room very quickly. Anyone that doesn't seem like they're going to be a long-term fit, because the rates that they're renting. Should I explain what pad split is? Maybe people
sure.
don't.
Yeah, absolutely.
So took a home in Glendale that wouldn't have rented for more than $1,900 to $2,200 in a single family rental setting.
Yeah.
But it was a 5.2, and we actually had it. We had the garage converted into 2 rooms with a divider in the center. So picture walking out to the garage, you would have what is that called? The little cement block that keeps water from coming in.
Like you mean
The
like
threshold.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's where you would stand to open up the door, and you step down into 2 rooms. So
Okay, got it.
That brought the 5 to a 7, and then took a dining room area, closed off that wall, and added a door, which gave us 8. And then there's a company called Pad Split. It's very similar to Airbnb, except that people are doing long-term rentals of single bedrooms. So there's a common area with a desk and a table and chairs. And then there's a kitchen that's communal. And then each person rents their own individual room within that house. Now, each person's room has a PIN code on it. It's their own personal PIN code, which also works on the front door for them. But everyone's PIN code is universal on the front door, and they talk to each other. So my wife can, once they have left, she could change the PIN code, and it would no longer work on her door, and each person's PIN code will not work on anyone else's in the house.
Got it.
They all pay.
Keeps it safe.
Yeah. They all pay a pretty small amount, and it comes out of their bank account weekly. Actually, sorry, Pad Split takes it on the day that they get paid. We get paid weekly from it. So I don't know if it's how that works, but either way, we get paid. It pays us weekly. So think like $230 a room per person
Per week?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when you multiply, our average though realistically is 209 times 8 rooms, 4 times a week. Now
that's 4x of what you're getting on a normal.
Yeah. Now Pad Split takes 15%, which I'm totally fine with, because
Absolutely.
they do the background checks, they do the delinquents. They are very active in finding out what cities are best for owners and avoiding ones that are problematic, and they've done litigation, against cities. All that's behind the scenes. We never have to worry about it. So I think 15% is more than gracious. And this isn't even I don't have any skin in the game with Pad Split. This is just something that my wife and I tried. And to answer your question, to get people going back to where we were before I segued into what Pad Split is, if there's any sense that it's not going to be a long-term fit, we're a right to leave state in Arizona. We don't have to give you a reason. We do have to give you a 10-day time frame, but just be done with it. Because the people who are good and are going to be good, we have found, they don't intend on leaving.
And so these are people, do you have an age group of like?
All over, but so like our core, his name is Dan. He drove me nuts at first. My wife said he's a really nice guy. I think you're not into details, and he's asking a lot of detailed questions. I'll take the reins with Dan, answer all of his questions, and he's been amazing. Actually took one of our guys that was staying at our place. We didn't even know he was an alcoholic, but he took him to a detox center
Oh, wow.
and paid for it. One of our guys,
Who's this guy
one of our pad split guys. He's an engineer. He's 57 years old.
that lives there? That he's just
He
there?
just programs on his computer in his room all day. He figured if I'm going to be in a small room all day, I might as well be the cheapest room possible.
That's smart. Yeah.
He's got money. He wants to retire in 4 or 5 years, but he doesn't plan on leaving there until then. So this is kind of just his last, I'm going to keep expenses low. And so you want someone like that. Contrasted with, we had a guy that, I don't know what drugs, he must have been doing drugs because he just was kind of erratic behavior.
Yeah.
We saw him climb out of his back window with our Ring camera, and then he came back around an hour and a half later and said someone had broken into his room because the window was broken. So, but if you're willing to go through that first part of we don't know who these people are and get to the point where you have like a nucleus where they just all get to know each other, they're all going to be there for a long time. Now it's stable, and it's been, a real good cash flow by comparison to what it would have been or could have been before it.
That's interesting. I've actually heard about pad split. I've looked for deals when they come up to see if there's something that can be converted into that. And probably the best thing is that if you decide to make it not a pad split, it's very easy to turn it back into a normal house, so you could turn it on and sell, right? How much did you renovate the whole house when you bought it, or?
No, actually. So the deal came from a wholesaler who actually owns 4 or 5 of them.
I happen to know this guy, yeah.
Accurate. Maybe he owns more now.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that they from what I understood, they couldn't get the goal to the finish line in time for they were over leveraged, and this property was going to hold them up from other opportunities. But their original intentions when they made the offer on buying it was to use it, and they had known the neighborhood was going to be right. So we closed on it, and basically allowed them to do the renovations that they were going to do since they were experts in it.
Yep.
And then so we were out that amount of payment on top of it, basically. But we didn't have to do the renovations. We were able to trust them. They got the key locks set up. They showed us how to do it. They even had cabinets labeled with each room number, so that in the kitchen there's no confusion about whose dishes are mine or whatever.
Each person has their allocated little space. Are there multiple fridges?
There's 2 fridges, and each fridge has a shelf which has room numbers on it as well.
Got it.
As well as they're side by side, so there's 4 on the door and 4 shelves in the side by side on the fridge and in the freezer.
Yep.
So
it's actually really convenient for sure. And I'm sure if somebody wanted to put a small fridge of their own into like their room, they could do that too. For sure, right?
And then I think so. So to answer your question about, we got someone from 22 years old, Grand Canyon University student, all the way up to a 57-year-old engineering student, and everything in between, including, and then so 6 guys, 2 girls. They all can rate each other, so if there was ever a concern with like someone being inappropriate or whatever, they can discreetly let us know. And if more than half of the individuals rate one individual that they don't like poorly, then it automatically asks them to leave.
It seems like a great little system. I'm interested to see how far this goes, because I know pad split for sure is coming into this market. Phoenix is not a big market for them. They come from they're in some
Atlanta,
other,
right?
Yeah, larger markets, and so they're kind of just new into this space. And what I like about pad split is that like you can't party there, right? There's noise ordinance. You can't you wouldn't disturb the neighbors or neighborhood. So it's not like Airbnb where
no talking on your phone or audio without headphones.
That's huge.
After 10 p.m.
That's huge.
So, yeah.
There's no community disturbance, which is great. And so I think that there's going to be more and more of those that pop up. So
I'm sure there is community disturbance, but so do you know the history of like the guy who originally had the idea to do what is called a pad split?
No.
So he bought a condo in college, a 3-2, and he got renters from him. Well, the whole time with his first 2 semesters, the renters looked at him as the landlord. So when they were annoying, he'd tell them, guys, I got to go to work in the morning. And it'd be like, oh, dad's coming out to, whatever. So he gets this idea. The following year, he gets different renters, and he pretends like he's a renter. Okay? Now, they don't know anything, but he's like, yeah, this is my 2nd year here. Oh, this is where we put the dishes. Oh, this is what time, as a general rule, we all just agreed 10 o'clock is the cap. We don't want to go past that. And he just kept referring to we,
Smart.
starting boundaries where he's not the authoritative figure. Oh, the landlord's a really nice guy. You'll never see him, but yeah, I mean, you just mail a check to this, takes care of it. He has a PO box, right? So he established that they were defining their rules and there was no authoritative figure. Well, to answer to your point, there probably is disturbances, but they kind of police each other and have the capability of doing it. So it's kind of cool.
It's an interesting way to think about it. Not that this is a plug for Pad Split, but I mean, those of you out there that are thinking about it, just this is like I'm looking at it if I see something that comes up that makes sense, because I know the areas also matter, right? You're in Gilbert, that's probably a decent area. There's certain other parts of the valley you might not want to be in, but
yeah. Well, this one isn't in Gilbert; it's actually in Glendale. Which maybe you say that's probably not.
That would have been where I would go. No, not at all.
There's just less rules with the HOAs and everything.
I want really to go one more question, which is like, and I think it's important, is how would you define success?
Oh man, I actually thought in the shower this morning this was going to be a question, and I didn't come up with a conclusion, so I don't have anything canned. But I think I have success in my mind for different areas. I mean, I would love to see my son, be a good dad. That in future years would be a measure of success of what I'm doing today, right? Because what's the Proverbs? You might not get to sit in the shade of the tree you plant today, right? So like, hopefully I'll be there, but you're always thinking that could be 35 or 30 years from now, right?
Right.
So in that order, I mean, like I said, my framework is God, family, and work. So being virtuous in my dealings, being honest in what I'm promising people that I work with or customers or clients that I have. I don't say that I'm going to make something happen if I don't know that I can make it happen. If I don't know if something can happen that you're requesting, I'm going to make sure that I let you know. I'm not sure if this is a possibility, but I'll do everything. And, family, being a good husband, being a good provider, so that setting them up for the future, so that if I were to die today, I wouldn't have concerns for them.
They're taken care of.
Yeah. And being available to them, to have those conversations that we talked about. I mean, we for that reason, we're pretty strict with screen times. We don't have screen times during the week. Saturday, there's a time limit, so
you can set all that, which is great.
And then financially, I mean, mine's pretty modest and simple. I mean, some people might call it unambitious, but I mean, I want to have 25 paid in full homes by the time I'm 55. That's a really simple goal. But because at that point in time, like you said at the beginning, that's more than enough, right? Like,
yeah.
And I'm doing all those other things, setting my family up for success. If I want to go further after that, who knows? But if I get to that point financially, then I think I will have attained what I was hoping to.
What is your interaction with investors? Like, what, from the appliance side, going back to the business, what you can provide for other investors that are out there? There's a lot of them that are listening to this right now. So, like, why would somebody use you, or like, what value do they bring to the table other than just being another appliance provider?
Yeah, so going back to the business itself, one of the things, and this is specifically to the local market in Arizona, but one of the things that we do is the philosophy has always been give your best deal possible. So we know what our operating expenses are. We know what commission payout is, after the sale. And so although a lot of independent retailers, especially in the appliance space, think we're crazy, when we make deals with someone like LG, stack washer and dryer that everyone in town is selling for $2,200, well, they made a color, it was red. And
I know which one you're talking about.
And it doesn't sell at the big box stores.
Yeah.
So we bought a bunch of them for $1,300 when you would normally pay $1,800. Most people would think, well, then you'd go to $19.99 and your competitor's at $2,200. It's a no-brainer. What we do is we were selling that thing for $1,599. And people are like, why would you leave $600 on the table or $400 on the table or whatever? when people walk away from Spencer's, what we want is for them to know, not just be like, oh, we maybe saved $100 or whatever, like make an impression on them. And the way that my dad would always call it is you take every one of those impressions is like a brick, and you're building and establishing a house, a frame of reference for the customer to look at.
Way to put it, for sure.
And when you do the disservice where they don't feel like they got that, where maybe they find out we were priced incorrectly, or someone else did have something that we oversaw and were more than our competitors, you're taking those bottom bricks out, and you can destroy a whole building with enough of those, right? So to answer your question, specifically knowing no matter what market you're in, I'd find an independent retailer, because believe it or not, I wholeheartedly know, I don't just believe, I know that we are going to beat model for model match any price of a big box store. But beyond that, personally, I've been the biggest detractor of my success at times, because I'll tell people straight up, I know this is the package you say you want for that home, but you're at a $500 entry price, which is an entry in Gilbert, right? Let's just use that as the going example. It's a first-time home buyer more than likely, and a 3-2, you don't need to spend that much. Here's what I would do. And sometimes they believe me, and a lot of times they actually don't. No, these are the ones that I like, or my designer likes, or whatever. And so I can ideally save you money, and whether you trust me, if it's going to matter whether you spend more or not, that's up to you. Flip side is then on higher end stuff, guys that do a lot of the $370,000 to like $600,000 flips, they'll get used to, it's okay to have a plastic interior dishwasher, or not providing the fridge or something like that. And then they go and they found one in what's over off the 87, like Shea and all that.
What do you mean? What?
They go and find a house in a nicer area that just falls into their lap, and now they're kind of outside of their comfort zone, and they're going to list this thing for like 1.3, 1.2.5 or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, dude, you have to put more money into this, because now it's not a first-time home buyer.
Right. That's a different game.
Yeah.
Different game for sure.
Now, I've had people that came to me with a quote from a competitor, and they had $87,000 worth of appliances. Okay, the house needed nice appliances. They were listing it for 1.6 in Scottsdale, but they didn't need to spend $87,000, and I told them that because they were going with a high-end luxury brand, and I was able to get the high-end luxury look where 99% of people wouldn't know one way or the other, because they don't look at appliances all day like I do.
Yeah.
Give them the luxury look, but they ended up spending, and it's a lot. I'm not saying it isn't, but when you talk about rehab budget, it was a lot off. We were able to do it for like 42, which
that's half, right?
It's more than half. Yeah. So it's the name of the game in flipping is not spending where you don't need to. And because I've had that experience in that space, and even if I haven't flipped a home, I've never flipped a home that I sold for more than 700. But even if I haven't been in that space, I've sold product to homes in that space and know what people are complaining about or asking for.
Well, there's also, it's even if you haven't been there, like to your point, you're able to see the people that are, right? And so you're able to give that kind of knowledge and experience and foresight for people that maybe are going to try to if you're in even a community where like you don't want to spend more than you have to on the appliance package to get the same look or the same feel that you're going to give to somebody.
Right.
Right. There's been multiple times when you and I have had a conversation and you've steered me in the direction of going cheaper than what I think I was going to do just because of where I'm putting it. Right. That's happening.
Well, another common one is like, our mutual friend who's flipped a ton of them, he hasn't put he's put a fridge in one out of the last 100 that I've sold him, and it was only upon request of the buyer.
Yep.
And then when my most recent flip that we closed on last week, all we had in the notes was, we have access to discounted pricing on appliances. We'll give you a credit of $2,000 with a full price offer. The second we dropped the price $5,000, I took it out. But there still wasn't a fridge, is the moral of the story when we closed on it.
Sure.
So that's another area where you can save $1,500, $2,000.
And like all those pennies count, that's for sure. I think that the moral of the story here is just that, like, when you have especially in the flipping game, this is part of it, right? You have to have a good component, just like you got to have a good flooring person, you got to have a good painter, you got to have a good framer, you got to have all these people that are good, and so the value that you bring to the table is being that person for the appliances package.
Absolutely.
I just think that that's really good. And dude, I appreciate you being here today. I think we've talked about a lot of different areas that maybe we weren't planning to talk about, but it's a lot of relative.
I felt like I was having a conversation at least.
And that's the whole thing, right? Yeah. It really is.
You're less intimidating than your voices on the phone.
I like to just be, this is a conversation, man. That's all it is. That's all
fun.
Hey guys, thank you so much for listening into our conversation today. I have a really special treat for you. There's a link below that you're going to find that can get you connected up with Dave. If you're in Arizona and you want to get connected with Dave about your next project, he's got some really great deals to help you out with, not only just your appliances, but also electronics and things like that. It's been a really big thing for me, and has really done great things for flips that we've done and properties that I own. So if you want to get connected to him, make sure to look at the link below, and we'll make sure to get you connected. Thank you so much. See ya.